The Zodiac Killer, the Cryptic Phantom. The year was 1968 and San Francisco was alive with the spirit of the counterculture. Yet beneath the peace rallies and the freedom songs, a shadow was lurking, one that no one expected. One quiet evening in December on a deserted road in Vallejo, California, a young couple parked their car to enjoy a private moment. Distant headlights cut through the darkness, approaching slowly. In an instant, the silence was shattered by the pop of gunfire. This was only the beginning. A year later, another couple, Michael Mageau and Darlene Farron, were attacked in similar fashion at Blue Rock Springs Park. The man who would come to be known as the Zodiac had made his entrance. From that moment, his eerie legend began to grow, with a wave of fear sweeping through California. Just weeks after his second attack, 3 letters arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, and Vallejo Times-Herald. Each was marked with the same greeting: "This is the Zodiac speaking." Inside the envelopes were cryptic ciphers, promises of future violence, and a chilling boast. The Zodiac demanded that each letter be published, threatening to go on a killing spree if the newspapers didn't comply. The cryptograms, filled with bizarre symbols and letters, were his taunting game. He dared the police and the public alike to solve his riddles, reveling in the spotlight and the dread he instilled. When decoded, his message was chilling. "I like killing people because it is so much fun." The lines blurred between horror and a dark thrill as people began to realize that a calculated, unfeeling mind was behind these gruesome crimes. Detectives Dave Toschi and Bill Armstrong took on the case. These seasoned officers found themselves thrown into a maze of twisted clues and dead ends. The Zodiac was like a ghost slipping in and out of sight, leaving behind a trail that seemed to disappear with every step. No fingerprints, no witnesses, only his cryptic letters and coded messages, each one revealing a glimpse of his obsession with murder. Despite all their efforts, every lead was a dead end. Suspects were questioned, theories were formed, but nothing could break the mystery surrounding this elusive killer. Toschi and Armstrong found themselves haunted by a man who seemed to know exactly how to evade capture. The Zodiac's letters continued, each more cryptic and taunting than the last. He claimed responsibility for more murders and provided coded clues, hinting at his next moves. He even mocked the police for their failures, telling them exactly how he had outsmarted them. In one of his letters, he drew a crosshair symbol, which became his infamous logo, signing each letter with it as a mark of ownership. With every letter, the Zodiac controlled the public's fear. Schools were on high alert, and families lived in dread. He enjoyed playing with the media, providing just enough detail to keep everyone guessing, but never enough to catch him. His games with the police were his entertainment, a disturbing way to keep himself in the headlines. In 1969, a new attack shocked the city. On the shores of Lake Berryessa, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a peaceful day when a hooded figure approached them. Wearing a black executioner's mask with his crosshair symbol emblazoned on the chest, the Zodiac tied them up and stabbed them repeatedly. Before leaving, he scrawled his crosshair symbol and a cryptic message on Hartnell's car door. Cecilia didn't survive, and although Brian did, he was left scarred for life, haunted by the image of that hooded figure. Shortly after, the Zodiac sent another cipher, the infamous Zodiac 340, which would take over 50 years to solve. In it, he described his urge to kill and his twisted ideology, hinting at a belief that his murders would grant him slaves in the afterlife. For the Zodiac, murder was more than a crime. It was a ritual. The Zodiac's boldness escalated with the murder of Paul Stein, a San Francisco taxi driver. Shot in his car, Stein's murder was different from the previous ones. It seemed almost too public, as though the Zodiac wanted to be caught. Witnesses saw him leave the scene, yet somehow he vanished into the night. The police soon received another letter along with a piece of Stein's bloodied shirt, a trophy to prove the Zodiac's identity. With this letter, the Zodiac taunted the police further, hinting that he had been close to capture but had slipped away. His confidence was chilling as he described himself blending into crowds, taunting them from within their midst. Over the years, the police investigated multiple suspects. Arthur Lee Allen was one of the most notorious. His peculiar behavior and a number of coincidences made him a prime suspect. Yet, without physical evidence, the case against him was circumstantial at best. DNA samples, handwriting analyses, and psychological profiling were all inconclusive, leaving the police with no definitive answer. Allen would go to his grave denying any involvement, and the Zodiac's identity remained hidden in shadow. By the mid-1970s, the Zodiac's letters slowed, but they never truly stopped. Every so often, a cryptic message would arrive, reminding the public that he was still out there, watching, waiting. His taunting tone never changed. He continued to claim more murders, but the authenticity of these claims was questionable. The last confirmed Zodiac letter arrived in 1974, hinting that he might have moved on or simply grown tired of the game. Despite the lapse in letters, the Zodiac's impact was indelible. To this day, detectives, historians, and amateur sleuths pore over his letters and codes, searching for clues that might finally reveal his identity. Forensics have advanced, but even with modern technology, the Zodiac's ghostly figure continues to elude capture. The Zodiac Killer remains an enigma, a shadow cast over one of the most turbulent periods in American history. His cryptic messages, haunting ciphers, and chilling calmness in the face of death have turned him into a legend. His case shaped the landscape of criminal profiling and remains one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in the world. Each time someone attempts to solve the Zodiac's ciphers or examine his letters, the shadow of his identity looms, a puzzle left incomplete. The world may never know who he was, but his story serves as a grim reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. By 1970, with no clear suspects, the police turned to psychological profiling to try to understand the Zodiac's motives. They brought in experts who studied the letters, ciphers, and crime scenes to develop a profile. Dr. Lawrence Chandler, a criminal psychologist, examined the Zodiac's letters closely. The pattern of his letters suggested a need for control, an urge to instill fear, and perhaps a deep-rooted resentment against society. The Zodiac displayed an unusual level of arrogance. His letters showed a disdain for authority and an intense desire for notoriety. This wasn't just about the thrill of killing. It was about making his presence unforgettable. Dr. Chandler proposed that the Zodiac might have experienced some trauma or rejection early in life, leading to his obsession with dominance and power. The Zodiac, he theorized, needed an audience to feel powerful, a classic trait of narcissism and sociopathy combined. The Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages were unlike anything the police had seen before. The symbols, numbers, and patterns he used seemed meticulously planned, as though they held a deeper meaning. The first cipher, the Zodiac 408, had been cracked by a local couple, but subsequent ciphers, like the 340-character cipher, would remain unsolved for decades. The Zodiac 340, which he sent shortly after the Lake Berryessa attack, was one of the most famous and mysterious codes in criminal history. Over the years, cryptologists, mathematicians, and even amateur sleuths tried to solve it, yet its meaning remained elusive. The Zodiac seemed to revel in this, knowing he had created a mystery that could outlive him. When the 340 cipher was finally solved in 2020 by a team of cryptography enthusiasts, it contained a chilling message. "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me." The Zodiac's sense of superiority was clear. Even 50 years after his crimes, he continued to taunt from beyond the grave. While Arthur Lee Allen was one of the most popular suspects, there were other individuals who captured the attention of investigators and Zodiac followers alike. One theory suggested that the Zodiac might have been a military veteran due to his use of cryptography, his apparent comfort with firearms, and his organized methodology. Another theory proposed that the Zodiac was a highly intelligent but socially isolated individual, possibly someone with a background in mathematics or engineering. This profile matched several suspects, including Rick Marshall, a projectionist with an interest in cryptography, and Lawrence Kane, a man whose psychological profile and physical description matched some eyewitness accounts. In the early 1990s, a new theory arose connecting the Zodiac Killer with another infamous criminal, the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. Kaczynski, a Harvard-educated mathematician with a history of bombings and manifesto writing, had lived in California around the time of the Zodiac murders. His meticulous planning, hatred for society, and use of cryptic codes led some to believe that he could be the Zodiac. However, no concrete evidence was ever found to link Kaczynski to the Zodiac crimes. Still, the similarities between the two killers kept the public's imagination alive. Kaczynski was eventually caught, but he denied any connection to the Zodiac case. With the advancement of forensic science, DNA analysis became a critical tool in cold cases. In 2002, investigators hoped to extract DNA from the back of Zodiac's stamps and envelopes. However, the DNA was degraded, and any usable evidence was inconclusive. In 2018, with the rise of genealogical DNA testing, new hope emerged. This technique had successfully identified the Golden State Killer, another notorious serial killer from California, after decades. Speculation grew that the Zodiac might also be identified this way, but no DNA profile for him was strong enough to connect him to any known family lineages. Yet, the Zodiac's DNA remains in the system, awaiting any future breakthrough. One of the Zodiac's letters revealed a strange detail about his belief in the afterlife. He wrote that killing would give him slaves to serve him in the next life. This belief, while bizarre, pointed to a warped worldview, one where he viewed murder as a means to eternal power. Some speculated that the Zodiac might have been influenced by occult practices or ancient rituals, but his exact beliefs remain unclear. This aspect of his personality only deepened the mystery, adding an almost supernatural element to his crimes. People began to wonder if the Zodiac was part of a cult, or if he had delusions of grandeur that drove his actions. The idea that he saw himself as a figure of myth gave the public even more reason to fear him. As the years passed, the Zodiac case became one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in the world. True crime enthusiasts, professional detectives, and online forums were captivated by the case, poring over every clue and debating each theory. The Zodiac had become a symbol of the ultimate unsolved crime, a puzzle that no one could ever fully piece together. The Zodiac story also had a significant cultural impact. Books, movies, documentaries, and podcasts were made about him, each one attempting to solve the mystery or at least capture the chilling atmosphere he had created. The Zodiac had transformed from a real-life killer into a dark legend, his symbol and taunting letters forever haunting those who tried to understand him. In 1990, a strange letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle, marked with the Zodiac's crosshair symbol. The letter hinted at new murders but was vague on details. It was unclear if this was truly from the Zodiac or a copycat, but it reignited public interest. Even decades later, the Zodiac continued to haunt the city, a phantom that refused to be forgotten. Some believe that this was indeed the Zodiac's final message, a farewell from a man who had evaded capture and won his game of cat and mouse. Others think it was the work of an imposter, capitalizing on the legend. But the truth, like so much else in the Zodiac case, remains a mystery. The Zodiac Killer's legacy endures as a chilling reminder of evil that can hide behind a mask of normalcy. His story is not just about murder, it's about a man who turned fear into his weapon, one who manipulated public terror with every letter and symbol. For those who have tried to solve the case, the Zodiac's ghost lingers, a puzzle that defies time, logic, and reason. He exists in the unanswered questions, in the codes left incomplete, and in the endless search for the truth. To this day, his identity remains a haunting shadow on the landscape of criminal history, a reminder of the darkest corners of the human mind.